I can identify what I need to do, and I'm conservative with tooth structure, but I can identify what I need to place on that tooth for longevity and for a better aesthetic outcome.
Because how long do they last?
That also has to do with how the patient treats what you put on after they leave the office, basically. And, you know, if it's a thin veneer, it's a little more fragile than a crown would be. But again, it's situation to situation, patient to patient. There are some patients that a little thin veneer is all we need to do to improve the aesthetics. But like I said, there's some situations where that's not gonna work. That's not gonna cover up what you need. The other question I get a lot, Sherry, is what's the difference between bonding and veneers?
Yeah.
And bonding.
Welcome to today's Heart of the Hustle. I am here with Dr. Mary Swift from Dallas Laser Dentistry. Welcome.
Thank you, Sherry.
So
Thank
glad
you for
you're
having me.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your practice.
Thank you. I am a general and cosmetic dentist in the heart of Dallas. I've been in practice for over 25 years, 28 years, somewhere around there.
You started when you were 10.
Thank you for that. I have had the honor and privilege of helping create beautiful smiles here in Dallas for all these years. It's my passion. I can't imagine doing anything else. It's rewarding on so many levels, and it's something I love to talk about.
Tell us why dentistry.
It is a beautiful blend of art and science. I've had a couple of young people, you know, interested and want to know, you know, why, just like you want to know why, and how, and you know, how to get started. And the first thing I say is, you know, number one, are you good in sciences? Because you got to get into dental school, okay? And number two, are you good with your hands? Which, you know, is, you would assume everyone going into dentistry would be good with their hands. And it's a must, truly. It's rewarding in that you can change lives. You can literally change lives by changing smiles.
Yeah. Tell us about one of the biggest transformations you've made.
Recently, a business owner who initially pumped all of their savings into getting the business started, and ended up mostly in the back of the store because she was not happy with her smile. And we were able to recreate her smile and recreate her life and bring her back into smiling at her customers instead of doing the accounts receivable in the back. Very, very rewarding for our practice.
And so she's back at the front of the
She's back
store
at
now.
the front, greeting her patrons and smiling. You know, that was one of those where there were happy tears when we did the big reveal, which warms our hearts just as much as it does hers.
Yeah. So tell me what happens in that kind of transformation? Like, what are the steps? I'm sure it's different with every client, but just in general, right? Even with her, just give us an example.
Okay, so the, you know, initial consultation, and many times the patients don't even know what's available, what their choices are, what we can do. So there's a lot of education that goes into that first meeting. And that first meeting is also them seeing if they like me or not. I mean, honestly, I never take for granted the trust that's involved. So a lot of information on that first visit. And like I said, sometimes I throw situations out there that they didn't even know the choices were there. There's always that meet and greet, and we like to do that at no charge, believe it or not. We love to talk teeth. We love to talk smiles. So we offer a consultation at no charge for us to at least start them thinking about what the possibilities are that are out there. So that initial consultation, we're meeting each other, we're getting to know each other, we're finding out about each other. And then from there, a lot of record taking, photography. Photography is so helpful. We do little digital scans, x-rays. We definitely have to have a good foundation before we can build on it. And that's one kind of thing that people don't always understand is they'll come in and they want to get right to work. They want to get that smile. We want that too, but it'd be like your contractor making improvements on a bad foundation in your home. You have to have the basics there. So there might be a period where we're just getting that ready for the smile. So that's the initial consultation goes a little bit like that. We have a lot of modern technology in my office, I'm proud to say, and people comment on that a lot. They notice the technology, and we use that technology to help design their smile. And when I say design, it has to fit your face. It has to fit, your smile has to fit your face, and it has to look like you, but better. So that transformation takes dialogue. It takes time. It takes we do mock-ups. We can do a little digital, we can put your smile in your photograph, your new smile in your photograph, kind of give you an idea what it will look like.
So what are the options? Like, do you want a big Julia Roberts smile, or do you want something that's a little more subtle?
Miss America. There are some people that you don't that I'm going to say this kind of tongue-in-cheek. They want it to look fake. They want it to look like they paid for it. They want that big, bright, white smile. And then there's others that want it to blend in. They don't want it to, be obvious that they've done something. So that's part of the dialogue that takes place in that consultation. What do you want? What do you expect?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I know one of the things we talked about when we were planning for this meeting today was sometimes you do Invisalign first so that their teeth can get straight. Tell us about that, because that's a big part of the process.
It is. So Invisalign changed the shape of dentistry. It was, when it was first offered, it had some limitations. As Align Technologies, the Invisalign company, have pumped money into their research and development, it's turned into almost now you hardly ever see the bands and brackets that you used to see. And on top of that, adults would never consider going into bands and brackets again. So it opened up a whole new market for the adult population to straighten their teeth. Sometimes we straighten them, that's all they need. A lot of times, I would say probably 90% of the time, I encourage alignment before we do any cosmetic procedures like porcelain veneers, crowns, mostly because if I move the teeth into a better position, I don't have to sacrifice as much tooth structure to do the pretty stuff on top of it. I know that sounds a little complicated, but in a nutshell, if you've got a wanky tooth sticking way out here, I would have to cut it back so far to get it into the right place to make it look nice, that we might end up into the nerve, basically. I know that's a little scary to think about, but that's what I'm avoiding. I'm being more conservative with tooth structure, human tooth structure, if I can move it into a better place before I put our porcelain on top of it.
Yeah. And I wonder, do sometimes people do Invisalign and they're like, you know what?
Yeah. Oh,
it looks good.
That's a dream
fine.
come true, and I'm glad you brought that up because when you add a cosmetic crown or veneer to a tooth, okay, that's something I made on top of something our creator made, and there's maintenance involved. So I love it when I can be organic, when I can make that smile nice, just by doing Invisalign. But that's not always a reality. Sometimes the color is so deep on somebody's tooth that it needs to have a little bit of help. So yeah, I use a lot of Invisalign. I prefer getting things in it. Plus, that maintenance is less if I've got a good, stable bite consistently that is not hitting what I'm trying to put on. In other words, if I can, it protects the porcelain better if I have better alignment.
I'm going through Invisalign treatment right now, and
it's easy.
I don't have them on right now because they glare in the lights. It's not good.
It's easy though, isn't it?
It's super, super easy, and I never realized that my bite wasn't aligned because I'm right at the end until now. And the reason why is because I grind a lot. And so you won't grind or if you do, it won't be in, strange patterns
in trauma,
or something.
In a traumatic occlusion is what we call it. And protection at night the rest of your life. That it's a reality. Our teeth are not stable in the arch. They drift. They shift, they change. And if you want it to stay as gorgeous as it's looking, which it's looking really good, retainers at night.
Yeah, because I'm 53. And it was funny, just 6 months ago, I saw my bottom teeth were starting to get crooked. And I wore braces, the whole mouth full of metal in high school.
When Invisalign was first introduced, it was limited to people who had braces and had what we call relapse. And so it was, a minimally, not many people qualified for it. Like I said, now it's almost exclusively Invisalign. Yeah. So yeah, our teeth shift and drift. I said, if there was any other retainer I could wear on my body and keep it from aging and shifting, bring it. As simple as putting a retainer in at night. That's going to keep that. You'll be the little old lady in the nursing home with the prettiest smile.
So tell us the different options, because you mentioned veneers and there's crowns. What's the difference? Why would you use one over the other?
That's a good question, and a question we get a lot. A veneer is wonderful if you maybe want to close a space, or if you want to just brighten things up more than you could bleach or whiten. The veneer is a thin layer that gets bonded to the front of the tooth versus a crown that is 360 degrees around, okay? And I often have people say, well, why are you doing a crown? Why don't you just do a veneer? And it has to do with what I'm working with. In other words, if I have a tooth that has already had some fillings in it, or a tooth that has very deep, dark color, that I know a thin layer is not going to help that much, that's when you go to a crown. And people go, oh, I just want a veneer. Well, if I can't make it look good with just a veneer, you're not going to get just a veneer from me. You may go down to Mexico and get just a veneer. And that's what 25 plus years of experience gives you, is I can identify what I need to do, and I'm conservative with tooth structure, but I can identify what I need to place on that tooth for longevity and for a better aesthetic outcome.
Because how long do they last?
That also has to do with how the patient treats what you've put on after they leave the office, basically. And, if it's a thin veneer, it's a little more fragile than a crown would be. But again, it's situation to situation, patient to patient. There are some patients that a little thin veneer is all we need to do to improve the aesthetics. But like I said, there's some situations where that's not going to work. That's not going to cover up what you need. The other question I get a lot, Sherry, is what's the difference between bonding and veneers?
Yeah.
And bonding, we literally bond a veneer onto a tooth, but that's technical in my world. What the patient means is basically has to do with dollars, because we've got smart consumers out there and they see that bonding is less expensive. Okay, bonding, when the patient is asking, they're asking the difference, bonding and veneer. Bonding is our little tooth-colored material that we have in the office, okay? Like if you get a filling, we fill the tooth with a little tooth-colored filling material. It's that same composite resin material that the dentist, with their skills, with their hand skills, forms a veneer on the tooth. And there are some guys out there that are just phenomenal at that. But the patient isn't going to know who's phenomenal at that direct bonding veneer, okay? It's largely dependent on the artistic skills of the dentist, okay? A veneer is a laboratory fabricated restoration, okay? So you get the drilling done, you leave with temporaries, the final product is being made off-site in a lab, and then it's returned and bonded in place. And the labs are really quirky little places. It's filled with artists that only do teeth.
Which you want. You want someone who specializes in teeth.
And they're amazing. And because it's fabricated in a laboratory, it's a pressed restoration, and it's much stronger than the direct bonding. Okay, so when a patient comes in and says, well, I just want bonding, that means they want the dentist to use their skills and artistically create in the office directly on their tooth the final restoration versus something that a professional laboratory technician who doesn't have to worry about saliva, doesn't have to worry about a fidgety patient, doesn't have to worry about whether their schedule is on time or not.
Or if they had too much coffee.
Or if they had And then it's a beautiful, like, little piece of art that gets bonded in place.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I had, I don't know, I think it was bonding on my front tooth because I got knocked over on the playground when I was
We do it on
12.
kids, and and that's good if you there's because kids still have growth, kids still have color changes in their teeth. There's a lot of good reasons to do that direct bonding on kids, and I see that a lot. Patients come in and they've had that bonding since they were a kid, and then we talk about the more grown-up procedure of a porcelain veneer.
Yeah, because I imagine my teeth are a different size now than
and a different
were.
color.
Yeah.
And so I get that a lot, that what's the difference between bonding and a veneer.
Yeah. What about teeth whitening?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to go kind of the veneer route in order to get them whiter, or is that something?
A lot of times you do. There's situations where something, an antibiotic was introduced while the tooth was being developed, and the intrinsic, the inside the tooth grayness can't really get lifted to the point where patients the whitening chart got redeveloped about 15, 20 years ago. What we thought was white is now they look at that, A1, B1 and go, oh, that's not white enough, So it's the scale of white and what the public wants has changed. But yeah, there are a lot of times where just whitening won't get you there. Now, a lot of times, just like Invisalign, I want that understructure as white as it can get even before I cover it up. That helps with the brightness of the restoration. A beautiful restoration should look lifelike. So you don't want to completely block and make make it look lifeless, by just a block of white. It has to gradiate, it has to be translucent, and it has to look lifelike. So sometimes we'll do whitening even though we know we're going to cover it up. We want that understructure as vital and lifelike and white as we can get it before we cover it up.
And what are the options just for whitening?
Mm-hmm.
Is it bleach? Is it, are there lights?
The origin of whitening, this was interesting. It was a gum and bone specialist, a periodontist in the 30s who took a mixture of hydrogen peroxide and baking soda to help his patients with gum disease. And the hydrogen peroxide helped with the gum disease, but their teeth also got whiter. And that's how we found out that hydrogen peroxide, and now it's a different formula, it's called carbamide peroxide, is used in whitening. And it's very safe. very safe for the teeth. The one maybe possible side effect is a little tooth sensitivity. Yeah, my daughter called it lightning bolts in her teeth, and it zings, okay? That has to do with the dehydration. When we whiten teeth, we actually dehydrate the enamel. It takes about 24 hours for that to hydrate back. So a little bit of Tylenol, a little bit of Advil, whatever you take, works wonders, you know, in the 24 hours. As far as how you get there, it depends on the concentration of the bleach. So you can get over-the-counter products in toothpastes now. There's some whitening toothpastes that are out there. That is a very low concentration of the bleach. The next step would be the little adhesive strips. Okay, that's a little bit more strong of a formulation. All the way up to an in-office treatment, which is going to give you the quickest results, and that's a strong concentration. And if a patient is very sensitive, I'll back them down to a strip, you know. If they have no trouble with sensitivity, we'll do it with the in-office treatment. So it depends on patient sensitivity. Almost nobody wants to do it at home in the trays anymore because it takes night after night after night. Whereas if you go into the office, it's a quicker result. Yeah. It's so funny. They want to ask a dentist a dental question, but I can tell. Like if I go to a party, you know, they're like, "Oh, I really want to talk about my tooth," you know. But go ahead and talk to your dentist. It's what we know, and we're really geeks, and we love talking about teeth. So go ahead and ask them that question. If you meet a dentist, go ahead, ask that question.
Oh, you will love my husband. My husband's the guy at parties who will be like, "Hi, nice to meet you. You know, tell me about you." And they're like, "Oh, he literally did this at a party. "Oh, I'm a dermatologist." And he's like, "Oh, okay. So I got these moles on my face and blah, blah." And I'm like, "Oh my, you met this person 10 seconds ago."
I bet that dermatologist liked answering the question.
So if you were going to give somebody one piece of advice about how to keep their teeth really healthy, what's the one thing you would tell them?
And we're assuming they're starting with health?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe not.
Yeah. Well, if not, you know, this is another little factoid that people are always interested when I bring it up. Do you know where the twice a year dental checkup came from?
Let me guess, the insurance companies.
No, good guess though.
Okay.
A toothpaste ad. It was literally marketing, but it was the first time that the public started thinking about prevention, and it did get the people starting to get it in their mind that they need to regularly visit the dentist. But twice a year had no scientific evidence when it was first presented. We know now that there's a large percentage of the population that needs to go more often than that. Every 3 months, every 4 months, if there's any kind of gum and bone disease or any kind of pink in the sink is what we call it. If you brush your teeth and you get any pink in the sink, then you've got, I mean, if you washed your hands and you saw blood, you'd know something's wrong, right? Same thing. So the minimum twice a year. If you have any heart disease, if you have any Alzheimer's, we know now that there's a very strong whole body connection. You might have heard it said that the mouth is the mirror to the rest of the body. It is. We know now that there's a relationship between gum disease and heart disease. That same plaque that forms on your teeth penetrates the blood system, gets and settles on heart valves. We know this. So if you've got any kind of heart issues, if you've got diabetes and you don't heal well from wounds, and even Alzheimer's connections, you need to be getting cleaned 3 or 4 times a year. It's all about bacterial count and holding that bacterial count down in the oral cavity. Regular visits, definitely regular visits. And the home care, absolutely. And that's basically it.
Yeah.
See a professional, cleanings, and take care of them at home.
So I have to admit, I'm a little bit of a wimp about going to the dentist. So when you talk about the restorative and doing crowns and all of that.
Does it send a chill down you?
It makes me very nervous. And so talk to us a little bit about how do you make people feel comfortable when they're in the office? Because I think that's probably cost and fear are probably the two biggest reasons why people continue to live their lives with the smile that, you know, they're not satisfied with.
Yeah. A relationship, a good relationship. Find your dental home, we call it. There's a lot to be said for finding an office where the team is cohesive, where you see the same members of the team every time you go in. I've got employees that have been with me 20 plus years, 10 plus, I mean, I've got a cohesive team. That means they're communicating well. That means they're happy. That means they see the doctor in place and they trust that doctor and they like what that doctor does enough to stick with them and stay with them. So a cohesive team, communication, getting to know that patient, getting to know that patient's triggers. What is it that, is it the injection? Is it the, you know, drilling? What is it that that patient needs some help with? And most of all, it's a relationship.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I love about your practice is you're the one who's there, right? You're building the personal relationship with your patients, right? You're not opening a whole bunch of offices all over the Metroplex or all over the country, or, you know, you haven't moved from in that dentist to CEO where you're moving into building you know, an office. You're there with the patients, right?
Yeah.
Because I think, and tell me if this is true, it's because that relationship is important to you.
Oh my goodness. I have watched my patients have kids and now I'm watching their kids have kids. And it's the sweetest thing about what I do. It really is. You know, teeth are teeth. It's the people behind the teeth that make it special. And like I said, I never take for granted the trust they give me to take care of them. So it's important. Find a dental home. Find a place you're comfortable. Find a dentist that you trust. And I do get asked that question a lot, like if I have a patient that's moving out of town, how am I going to find a dentist? And a couple of little tips I could give somebody looking for a new dentist in a new town. So we have our governing body, the American Dental Association, and then each state has their chapter, and then each local district has their chapter. Call the local dental society. Ask them for a referral. They know who's involved. They know who the good ones are. You know, as a dentist, you graduate dental school, it's really easy to go hide in a little office and just do your stuff. But if you find somebody that is active in organized dentistry, cares enough about their profession to want to have a voice, and to want to be seen by their colleagues, that's a good place to start. Call your local dental society for a referral. From there, ask your friends and family, you know, who they go to.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for finding any kind of business. I think we forget about asking for referrals sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We forget about saying, like, hey, you know, what's the industry organization that, you know, that governs this, and how can I use them to give me a referral?
Right. And then I would say online reviews, super important. We're proud of our reviews, and that is a driving factor for looking up. Well, just like, you know, if you're going to buy anything off the internet, you're going to look at reviews.
Yeah.
I get asked a lot if the dental chains are, you know, a good place to land. You know, we talked about a dental home. And I would say yes, but ask these two questions. To the dentist, can you pick the materials you choose? Or are they sent, you know, that may be confusing, but if you're part of a chain, then the corporation may be choosing the lab and the materials that dentist uses. And I would say if the dentist has control over the laboratories they use and the materials they use, then that's a good choice.
Because you know that they're going to use the ones that they're trained on, that they're most comfortable with.
And not necessarily the least expensive or the, you know, deal of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. That's such great advice. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sherry.
We
That was
appreciate
fun.
it. Yeah. If people want to find you, where's the best place to find you?
Dallas Laser Dentistry, and look at the reviews.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much for being
Thank
here.
you.